Everybody, Madison here with Health by Ratio, and in this video, we are going to be covering my favorite exercise and a few of its variations to regaining health in the shoulder girdle. So we're going to talk about rotator cuff injuries and impingements and how to fix them. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because shoulder injuries are so incredibly common and prevalent for a variety of reasons. A lot of us use our devices whether it's our phones, whether it's our computers, that are constantly kind of putting our shoulders into this position, which can create impingements and tightnesses that can cause aggravations when we start reaching behind and grabbing things in our day-to-day lives. But also it's really prevalent in a lot of our careers and what we do. Like for one of our clients, Patty, who's a massage therapist and is always working on her clients, or like Peter, who's a carpenter and using his tools and using his arms like crazy. Not to mention that he also enjoys like tennis and guitar and stuff like that, involving the shoulder even more so. So the rotator cuff, the shoulder girdle, it's obviously a really important joint for us, but it gets tight for a variety of reasons, and it can get irritated from overuse for a variety of things that we do, whether that's a sport that involves throwing or something like kickboxing or yada yada yada. So I want to go into how we can correct this with a couple of key go-tos that we've utilized that are unique in comparison to like our standard wall walks or external rotators or the typical rows that we do, or full cup, or internal rotation, all the above that are so prevalent in our standard physical therapy. All good exercises, by the way, and things that we utilize, like our team that it consists of physical therapists. And so some of these exercises are things that we guide our clients through initially. But there are some really important factors that are often not addressed when we're going through the rehabilitation process for the shoulder girdle, which make kind of these exercises not work so well. So if you're in a scenario where you're doing all this shoulder work, but it's not necessarily solving your problem, well, then this might be very prevalent to you, just like it was for Patty, who had been doing physical therapy for several years prior to working with us, and had worked with her colleagues to give her countless massage release work, manual manipulation around her shoulder girdle, and she just couldn't get that thing where it needed to be. Well, how do we correct it? Well, the big issue with regards to the health of our shoulder has to do with how functional our actual scapulas work. So how much we're actually able to like protract and retract and stabilize. And a lot of times the exercises that we're given in physical therapy are great for helping us develop that scapula stability. But if we're not cued into actually what it should feel like, if we don't have the proprioception in our brains to know, okay, this is what it actually feels like to have my shoulder in that stable position while I do this exercise, then all this is for naught. And a lot of times we might not even have the mobility to get into that stable scapula position. So the first thing that we always want to make sure is that, do we have the range of motion? Do we have the mobility? Do I have the ability to actually pull my shoulders back without having to shrug my shoulders up toward my ears? Can I pull them straight back? And do I have that control to go forward and backwards? If it's that in and of itself is challenging, then what'll happen is I might do all of the right exercises, but instead of me pulling my whole shoulder back with it, where I'm actually truly recruiting the back musculature that's pulling my shoulder back into its position. This is a ball and socket joint, but it's a shallow ball and socket. So the head of my shoulder can move a little bit out of that socket. And if I'm perpetually in this position, I'm literally moving the shoulder out of its position, out of its socket. And I can irritate all the tissues around here. So I got to pull it back into place. But if I can't move my shoulders back, if I don't have the range of motion for it, then I'm going to do rows like this. And I'm going to do external rotations like this. The shoulder's frozen. It's not moving with me on these motions. It's staying put. And it's really just my elbow and arm that are doing the movements. That's what was so prevalent with our client Patty, and what was so prevalent with our client Peter, and many other of our clients with those shoulder related issues, is they're doing all of the right exercises, but they're not actually doing it correctly. So the first thing is, why can't we? Is there a mobility restriction? And most often it's not. There is. So, what are the areas that we need to mobilize? And I'm going to run through these kind of quick because I want to jump into the cue around my favorite exercise. But the areas that we really want to work into is first and foremost the chest and the pectorals and the anterior delt here. This section right in front of our body. And we can do this with things like a trigger point ball. We could do it with a massage gun. We could do it with just our hands. But we want to work underneath that collarbone first and foremost and see if we got any hurt so good gunk while we're pushing into this soft tissue. And if we find it, if we find some hurt so good tension, we're going to massage into it. We're going to take some deep diaphragmatic breaths. That way it calms down the nervous system. And I want to create some movement to my arm as I'm going in and out of this. I can do it laying down on the ground and kind of get even more relaxed here, or I can do it sitting upright if need be. But I want to massage into this while I'm trying to open my shoulder up into whatever is a comfortable range of motion. If it gets irritated there, I'm going to stop and then come back and forth from whatever point is comfortable. But I want to keep working that area, keep massaging into it for however long it takes, 1 minute, 5 minutes, somewhere in between, for it to release and relax a little bit. Okay, perfect. I can work on, there's plenty of areas along here. I can work along that collarbone. I can work along the front head of my shoulder. I can work deeper into the pec region itself, but anywhere that has some hurt so good gunk, that's kind of our first step. The next one that's a really important area for the shoulder health is releasing our lats, kind of the armpit down the side of the ribs along kind of this back side. And again, we can do this with our hands if we want to. We can get into any hurt so good tension into this region down my ribs, or I can lay on a foam roller or a ball and I can get into that area as well and release and relax that region. Potentially the upper traps right next to the base of the neck along the top of the shoulder blade. That can be another really perpetually tight area that we might want to release. But all of these areas, the pecs, the anterior delt, the front of the shoulder, the upper traps, the lats, those are some really important things that we might need to be getting in some manual manipulation to. That can release our tension. Then we could do some like gentle door frame chest stretches. And depending on where your shoulder's at, you might be able to have your arms up here as you're opening up. You might have to drop your hands a little bit lower and open up your chest that way. Test it out. See what's comfortable for you. And if you can, work several different angles. Open up the shoulder and pull those scapulas back to, again, we're trying to free up that range of motion. Okay, now I've done some mobility work, spent maybe 5-10 minutes loosening up this shoulder girdle. Now, how do I teach my scapulas, the big back musculature, like our lats and our rhomboids and our mid traps, the things that we want to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting with our arms instead of just relying on my rotator cuff and over irritating and impinging the tissues around my shoulder. How do I get this big back musculature to work? Well, my favorite version of this, or I should say cue, is called a protract retract row. And there's a lot of variations to this. Again, this is more of like a principle or a series of cues that you could apply to any kind of row at any angle, as well as any kind of pull down motion. And we want to do these kind of pulling motions more frequently than pushing motions when dealing with rotator cuff and impingement related issues, because that's where the imbalances came from. It's not to say that we don't want to do any kind of pressing or anterior work as we're ready for it, but it's to say the priority is more pulling exercises for scapula stability. So how do I do what's called a protract retract row? So what this consists of, I'm going to use a resistance band. I could be doing this with like a dumbbell. I could be doing this with a cable machine, whatever, but I got my resistance band set up here. And what I'm going to do is I have my arms straight. I got some tension already pulling me forward, and I'm going to consciously let myself protract my shoulder. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to retract the shoulder. I'm going to pull that shoulder straight back. Again, I'm not letting my shoulder creep up toward my ear. I'm keeping that shoulder neutral and straight back. Once I lock the shoulder blade back, now I'm going to do my row and then release. Now, as I'm doing this row, I'm keeping my arm narrow to my body here. That's probably the safest position for the shoulder in general. That doesn't mean I can also go a little bit wider. I can also go really wide with this, but it depends on the health of your shoulder on whether you're capable of doing these higher elbow positions. To start, start narrow. That's kind of your safest bet here. But when I do this narrow row, I get into my retraction. I'm going to aim for my hand to wind up right at my ribs. That's what kind of keeps my shoulder neutral. A lot of times when people do rows, they'll pull the hand toward their chest and it causes them to shrug. So by moving the hand, aiming for it a little bit lower, it naturally kind of keeps the shoulder away from shrugging up towards that ear. But again, the name of the game is the retraction first. Then I do my row. Protract, retract, row. And I can change this angle, like I said. I can heighten or lower my anchor point and change the angle of my row. Same thing. I can change the equipment of what I'm doing my row with. I can change it towards a pull down type motion or a pull up where I am in more of this position and I'm going into my depress, like I depress and retract the shoulder, then do my pull, then straighten the elbow, then let it relax, then retract and depress, and then pull and relax. So the name of the game is I'm trying to get my scapula stabilized first, then do the exercise. And that's what recruits these big mid-back musculature that we really want to be our main drives of power when we're using our arms. So guys, this protract, retract row can be done a million different ways. Can be done with one arm, two arms at the same time, whatever works best for you. Play around with the equipment, play around with the angles that you're doing it as you are as your shoulder is feeling healthier and healthier. Only do the positions that feel comfortable, and as you stabilize better and it heals a little bit more, you'll be able to change up the positions or increase weight. But that's what teaches these scapulas to work first and foremost. And then when I do things like external rotations, all of a sudden I can actually retract my shoulders with it. Or if I start advancing myself in doing certain press work or full cup or things like that, I can keep those shoulders, those scapulas kind of retracted and stable, which allows me to give the best support to my rotator cuff. And it's pulling that head of my shoulder, the head of the humerus, the glenohumeral joint back into position. So now I'm not in this impinged area irritating that tissue. So that's what I wanted to cover on today's video, guys. If you like this video, please share it with somebody that you think could use it. Comment below on how you like these cues and how this exercise goes for you. Or let me know how some of that gunk is around that pectoral region and collarbone. If you got some hurt so good stuff in there, would love to hear from you guys. And as always, we'll see you on the next video. And if you have any questions, want any help, never hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to help. Talk soon.